Hello, I'm Robert, fact-checking stories that scare you. And this is one that's, this is the peace deal that the US and Taliban brokered in February. So it's important to know that as the background to this story. So there's now a claim that Russia paid the Taliban to kill US soldiers. I don't think it makes a lot of sense myself, and everyone concerned is denying it. Russia is denying it, the Taliban are denying it, the CIA is denying it, and what the CIA are denying, and the White House and everyone is denying that this intelligence was given to the president. The CIA professionally do not deny intelligence that is falsely leaked. They just keep completely silent about whether that was intelligence from them, whether it's true or not. They just keep completely neutral about that. That's their normal stance. So that they just deny, that they don't even deny the intelligence, means nothing. It's just what they do. But they do feel that it was important to say that there was no such meeting with Trump. And Trump, of course, then doesn't have to say anything about it. The White House press officer has denied that the meeting ever happened. So we come to the important thing to realize is that the CIA often make mistakes. They also have sometimes excellent intelligence, and an example of when they definitely did have good intelligence was during the last Kim-Trump summit, when apparently he said something in the press conference afterwards that he had surprised North Korea with their knowledge of the North Korean nuclear facilities. So they knew more about those facilities than Kim realized, which probably means that Kim was trying to pull a fast one over them and hide something or other that they knew about, and that's partly why it broke up and he went off home. At least that's what the US was saying. Trump, North Korea didn't confirm that. Anyway, so that's an example of good intelligence. Possibly it must have been quite something a bit earth-shattering to cause it to break up so suddenly. And presumably Trump felt that he was going to be able to pressurize them by revealing this intelligence, and instead North Korea just went home. But you can still, what they do have are very excellent satellites, much higher resolution probably than North Korea realise. But you can't see things with satellites that are happening underground, inside houses, in caves or dense forests. You can misinterpret what you actually do see. All you see is people walking around, and you may see signs or something, or cars coming, and then from that try and deduce what's going on. And the US often have difficulty in infiltrating places. So to try and have a US spy in North Korea, in the highest places for instance, to find out what's actually going on would be very difficult. So sometimes the US have excellent intelligence, but sometimes it is very flawed. And so this is an example of, I gave an example up here. So again involving North Korea, then there was intelligence back when they had the agreed framework earlier on, which was before the North Korean nuclear program started. Then the US intelligence claimed to have knowledge of a hidden, very large centrifuge installation in North Korea. On close examination, this was only based on North Korea buying lots of aluminium tubes, high-tech aluminium tubes, that would be just the right thing to build a centrifuge, but could be used for other purposes. And it gradually became clear that this evidence was very, very limited, because North Korea hadn't bought any of the other things they would have needed to buy to build a huge centrifuge facility to make 2 nuclear warheads a year, which is what the US was claiming. And so with that background, it seems very likely that this intelligence was flawed, and there were lots of other reasons why they could have bought those aluminium tubes, including building a small-scale facility, but not a big one. So it could have been they just bought them and kept them in storage, with the idea that later on they would use them if something went wrong in the negotiations to build a facility. And it could have been that they bought them to sell to someone else, or they started work on something but never took it very far because they never got the other components that were needed to build this huge centrifuge thing. All they had were the aluminium tubes, and that wasn't enough to take it very far. So that was very likely flawed intelligence. And then you've got about the same time the claim that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which was definitely flawed. Same time as that probably flawed North Korean thing, which led to the final breakup of the agreed framework that was stopping North Korea from developing nuclear weapons. And so the Iraq War was a similar mix-up around the same time, Bush administration. And Bush, he claimed the CIA intelligence said they had enough to make 2 nuclear weapons and a year, and Bush just hyped that up a bit and said on the basis of nothing that they had enough to make 6 a year. So there was a lot of stuff going on then that just wasn't based on anything, and then all based on just them buying some aluminium tubes. And then there was the wrong intelligence about the Iraq War, where the US invaded Iraq based on intelligence that was, even at the time, all the experts were saying, lots of experts were saying, there's no evidence of this, we don't believe that you have evidence. And they said, oh yes, we do, and went and invaded Iraq, and there were no weapons of mass destruction, and their evidence was indeed very flawed. So the US intelligence is not the omniscient thing that people sometimes think, that if you just say, oh, the US have intelligence of such and such. And they also spin things, like when Iran shot down a very high altitude US drone, it is entirely possible that the US drone was actually over North Korean or over Iranian territory, because they would have felt they were invulnerable and they might easily have just nudged a little bit over. But of course, if that happened, so you can't know if the US were telling the truth about saying it was outside. If it was inside, then they would of course deny it, because it would look very bad to say that they were over and it's only their word against Iran. And there were other third parties at that time that were saying that they had evidence of it being over Iranian territory. So you do get that kind of spinning thing, that it's not entirely certain that the Iranian drone was over US territory. It could have been over Iranian territory when the Iranians shot it down. So you don't just believe these things because the US say that the intelligence says X and therefore you believe it. And so in this case, this whole Taliban thing, then the many possibilities, I've just outlined a few of them. First, the intelligence never existed. That whoever leaked the information to the news, they either invented it or they misunderstood what they heard. It could be a deliberate leak of false intelligence to embarrass the Russians. Intelligence could exist, but the CIA decided it was flawed and didn't show it to the president. So that would explain why the meeting didn't happen, if it's true that it didn't happen. Or the intelligence existed, they did show it to the president, and the President made the executive decision not to act on it, perhaps deciding that it was likely flawed. Like the CIA come and say, well, we've got this information, but it's not very clear, and there are these issues with it, and these things, and we feel we can't make the decision as to whether it's flawed or not, it's over to you. And then Trump looks at it and he says, well, this is not enough evidence on which to go and say something to the Russians. So that's another possibility. Another possibility is that intelligence did exist, and the Trump administration was planning to act on it. So all this is supposing the meeting actually did happen, and that the White House press spokesperson is lying to protect the president, so he doesn't have to talk about it. So if the actual meeting did happen, then and Trump administration was planning to act on it, then but they needed more intelligence gathering, and that's why they didn't do anything, because it's incomplete. Another possibility is that the intelligence existed, Trump was going to act on it, but before he did that, and so everything in the New York Times and the Washington Post was correct, but that they're missing a bit of extra information, that after that he was all ready to act on it when some more information came up which showed that the intelligence was incorrect. And so in that case, this leak would have greatly embarrassed the Trump administration, and then the White House are lying to cover up so that Trump doesn't have to say anything, so that because out of this embarrassment, because in fact there wasn't any evidence, it turned out to be flawed. And if they don't say anything, then it just embarrasses the Russians and they don't get egg on the face. So that's just a few examples. You could go on and get more and more complicated. Once you start saying, well, we don't know if the press officer was telling the truth, because they don't always tell the truth, of course they don't. And so you don't know if that's true, you don't know if Trump did see it, you don't know if the CIA talked to Trump or didn't, or if it was stopped in the CIA and they never talked to anyone. You don't know if there even was any intelligence at all, because what they actually said is that where is it? The actual statement, what the press secretary actually said was that while it does not routinely comment on alleged intelligence or internal deliberations, they put alleged there. They never said there was intelligence. As I said, they will never, unless they really have to, like some legal process or some situation where it absolutely has to be revealed, they will not say even whether there was intelligence. Even if there was, they won't say there was. If there wasn't, they won't say there wasn't. They will just say it's alleged intelligence and not clarify, because clarifying may reveal things about their sources of information. It might compromise something, and just generally they just do not comment on leaked alleged intelligence. But she said that they felt that it was necessary. She said she's not denying the intelligence exists. That doesn't mean it does exist, because she said it was alleged intelligence. So she's not denying that it exists, but that the President was not briefed on it. This does not speak to the merit of the alleged intelligence. So being very, very cautious and cagey, not saying there was intelligence, but to the inaccuracy of the New York Times story, erroneously suggesting that President Trump was briefed on this matter. So really, it's completely erased everything, and then when you come along and say, but of course the press secretary could also be lying about all this. And so that's why you have so many possibilities. And there could be even more. So, but basically, nothing's going to happen. It's clear that whatever there was, there is political stuff going on. Joe Biden is saying if this intelligence existed, then Trump definitely should have done something about it. But that's not likely to go anywhere either. It's just political point scoring on both sides. Trump might say something back, or he might not. He might tweet something. But the whole thing is There's nothing here to worry about. It's absolutely clear that Trump is not going to take it up with Russia. Russia is denying it. The Taliban are denying it. The White House is denying it. Trump is not speaking. The CIA are denying it. The National Security Advisor, the Chief of Staff, they all deny that there was any meeting. So nothing's going to happen. And so then, and I'm just going to talk about, back to this peace thing. So this peace deal, I think it's 145 days. The Taliban have a huge incentive to try and stop anything happening, anything aggressive happening for 145 days, because then they have the huge prize that the US military will retreat from Afghanistan at that point. And as I said, the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense as an idea. So I don't believe that it is my own personal feeling on this is that there never was any intelligence, or that it was released as a false intelligence to embarrass the Russians, or it's flawed. I don't see how it's at all likely that the Russians would try this, because it's something the Taliban has been doing for years anyway. They don't need a bounty to do it. If the Russia want the Taliban to do this, all they need to do is not get in the way. They don't need to give them any money to do this. They will do it anyway, or they would have done in the past. And now, in the present, the Taliban won't do it, because the Taliban very much want to keep this peace deal. It's very difficult for them because there's so many factions in Afghanistan. It's very difficult for them to keep peace amongst all the factions. But that's what they're trying to do, because they have the huge prize for them, if they can keep peace for 145 days, that the US will withdraw. They will keep, I think, some bases in Afghanistan, but basically they'll be gone. And then the Taliban are trying to negotiate with the UN to have them completely gone. So in that situation, there is no way that the Taliban are going to be killing Americans. They don't want to do that. And in any case, the ones at risk, of course, are not Americans in the US. Afghanistan is not going to fight the US. It's Americans in Afghanistan. American soldiers specifically in Afghanistan would be the ones most at risk. But the Taliban are not going to be targeting them, and they're going to be doing everything they can to stop anyone else from targeting them, because they have this absolutely huge prize if they can succeed in keeping the peace. So there's nothing to worry, nothing is going to happen. The just political shenanigans, people shouting things at each other, Russia embarrassed, people denying things, people just saying that denying that anything happened, and then you have no idea whether anything did happen, and they're just denying it because they're perhaps for some other reason, or if really nothing did happen. I think it's entirely possible that nothing did happen, that there was no meeting with Trump, and that either the CIA stopped it before it got to the White House. So I think this is really quite believable. So of all these possibilities, I think it's entirely believable that either it never existed, or it's a deliberate leak of false intelligence, so the meeting never happened, but someone in the CIA, or maybe even given the approval of Trump, actually leaked it as false intelligence, or that it existed and the CIA decided it was flawed and didn't show it to the president. I think those three are quite likely information. The rest were rather hypothetical, getting more and more improbable ideas about what might have happened. And so I don't expect much to come of this. It'll just be a bit of it's hitting all the news at the moment. It's embarrassing the Russians in the middle of attempting the peace. And that's why the idea of a deliberate leak of false information, because Trump is in the middle of of these discussions with Russia about the New START agreement. And he's already embarrassed just yesterday he embarrassed the Chinese with this empty table. And it's sort of on the par with that, embarrassing the Russians. Maybe he thinks he can get some edge in the negotiations. So that's not impossible, but I don't like to say that's the reason, because there's no evidence for that. Absolutely no evidence for that. Just like the intelligence probably, I think it's most likely the intelligence never existed. Not a deliberate leak, it just never existed. Or the CIA never decided it was flawed and didn't show it to the president. But I think it never existed is quite a possibility, and someone just misunderstood something. Because the journalists are not reliable either. They often make mistakes. And it's entirely possible that none of this happened and it's just a mistake, and they've got a flawed source themselves, and they may even have misinterpreted what their source told them. So anyway, but don't worry about this. It's just nothing to worry about. You can go on and on and on spinning around. We will never know the answer until maybe 20, 50 years from now, whenever they release the secret papers. If any of whichever of us is still alive towards the end of this century, then we may find out. And it'll just gradually fade from the news, and it'll be yesterday's news. So hopefully you're less scared now.